Hello, Lake Elmo, and welcome to the latest edition of the Mayor's Show. With me today is Nick Johnson, City Planner for Lake Elmo, and I thought we'd take this show, the opportunity of the show, and talk about planning and development and the things we've got in store in Lake Elmo. And again, Nick Johnson is the go-to source for that information. So, Nick, your role as City Planner, could you describe that for us, please?
Yeah, Mayor, thanks for having me, number one. But in terms of the role of what the City Planner offers for the community, or what their role is in terms of serving the taxpayers of Lake Elmo, it's really a two-phase, two components to the job. One is helping individual property owners with their projects to improve their properties, kind of providing information to individual property owners about how they're able to use their land in terms from a zoning standpoint, and some of those kind of more individualized concerns or requests. And then the second phase of it, or the second component of the planning department, is more of that long-range vision, or that long-range land use planning, which is a critical component for the future of the community. The Lake Elmo Planning Commission also serves, or the planner serves as a resource for the Lake Elmo Planning Commission, which is the resident board, which does advise the city council on all land use matters that comes before the city.
Yeah, that they do, and they do a good job of it. You've been with the city for a couple of years now?
Yes, I've been with the city for a couple years, 2.5 years about. I started as an intern, was able to come up to the planner role in working with Kyle Plat, the community development director, who's a very experienced planner here in the Twin Cities metro area. And it's been great. I really appreciate all the staff and the appointed and elected officials that I've gotten the chance to work with. It's been a very rewarding experience. I got into planning generally because I had an interest in not only service to a certain extent, but local government and land use issues, the built environment, some of those things which, no matter what you do in life, it kind of touches on everybody's lives, is really the built environment and how land use does work. So that was kind of my passion to a certain extent, and I've been lucky enough to be able to work in a role that I get to do that every day. So
we're lucky to have both you and Kyle in this role. You serve quite a function for us. We talk a lot up at the council of a comprehensive guide and comprehensive plan. Could you kind of talk to the audience perhaps maybe how that gets brought to fruition and the process that goes into it?
Right. The comprehensive plan, for folks who are unfamiliar with that guidance document, it really is the main policy document for every city. And for every city in the 7-county metro, you are required to update your comprehensive plan every 10 years. Now, what is contained within a comprehensive plan? It's literally every policy that the city, or it gives guidance on every policy that the city would be engaged in, from the services standpoint, from the infrastructure, from all of those things. So within the comprehensive plan, there's the land use plan, there's the housing plan, there's the sewer, there's the water plan, there's the parks plan, there's the trail plan. So as the city is planning its community, all of the comprehensive plan serves as the main legal guidance for all of those various efforts. And so the comprehensive plan typically is a 30-year planning document. It gives policy guidance for the next 30 years. So we're currently operating under the 2030 comprehensive plan, but soon we will be updating to go to the 2040 comprehensive plan and following the Metropolitan Council's regional forecast. And so all communities within the 7-county metro have to update their comprehensive plan every 10 years. And many communities throughout other parts of greater Minnesota also have a comprehensive plan, kind of following it as a best practice for city government for making policy and such. So just as an example, the city's designated 2 areas for sanitary sewer service, the village, the downtown, as well as the I-94 corridor. So you would actually find in the comprehensive plan what the city's plan is for areas to serve with sanitary sewer. So that's just one example. So every project that comes before the city would be evaluated for consistency with the city's comprehensive plan.
You touched on one item, the sewer, certainly, and the areas the growth areas of City of Lake Elmo, certainly south of 10th, correct?
Yes.
Mostly portions south of 10th, and then the village.
Yes.
About a half mile or so, is that the mile radius is about it?
Yeah, the city's land use plan, which is a component of the comprehensive plan, has really been developed to target 2 specific areas for this sewered growth, if you will, the downtown, the village, and the I-94 corridor. And so what is contained with that is the city's developed a vision for those two areas for growth and development to be served by sanitary sewer. So typically it is a little bit different type of land use than what Lake Elmo's used to, certainly as a more rural or more open-spaced type community. You're looking at a little bit lower densities, given that most of the properties are on septic systems and are on different types of service, whereas sanitary sewer areas that are served by sanitary sewer tend to be a little bit higher density and a little bit different types of land uses. So, the city has guided two areas for this sewered type growth. But I think to the council's credit and to other people's credit who worked on these land use plans, they still remain over 10,000 acres of land in this what we call the rural planning area. And so what that means is that those areas are to remain as rural, and that includes not only your old historic, the Tri-Lakes area, this old kind of rural single-family area that we call of the Tri-Lakes, but all of the open space preservation neighborhoods that have been platted and developed in the rural areas, and then all of the large lot type subdivisions, residential estates, and then just to a certain extent agricultural lands and what we call rural residential, 10-acre lots, 20-acre lots, things like that. So a large proportion or a large percentage of the city's total land remains in this rural planning area as opposed to the sewered planned areas.
Yeah, I think it's important to understand that. It's certainly a question I get asked quite often. So in essence, the difference between the rural planning and the urban planning is just that. It's the sewer, but there are some other...
Yeah, it's not just that. The city's sewer plan could be expanded to go to other portions, but that's mostly driven by demand. If you're going to have neighborhoods that are within the rural planning area that are in some type of, not crisis, but into some type of situation where they need to be hooked up into some alternative form of wastewater treatment, the city could certainly amend its sanitary sewer plan within the comprehensive plan to serve some of those areas. There was an example of that along Olson Lake Trail, if you'll remember, where they did, some of those properties did hook into the Oakdale sewer system. But for the most part, you can amend the sanitary sewer plan it's almost a separate policy document than the land use plan. So the land use plan is what really guides these types of land uses that are served by sanitary sewer at those densities or those levels of development, say commercial development, business park, residential at the 2 to 3 unit per acre, as well as moving up to a more medium or high density type development type. So
it also is important to know there are some, as you say, some neighborhoods that could use the sewer to get them out of their systems not performing adequately. Just by the mere fact of running it out there will not change the land use per se.
Correct.
It's just one piece of a land use, or one piece of just the infrastructure. Doesn't change the zoning.
Correct. I mean, that's accurate, particularly in some of our older platted neighborhoods or the older existing neighborhoods, Tri-Lakes Village. I think you have a lot of properties that had septic systems on smaller lots. Then we're really able to properly serve those properties for a long term. I mean, now the Washington County is currently the permit authority for septic systems, and the thresholds or the requirements for having a septic system now on a vacant piece of land are higher than what would have been anticipated or required for those older existing properties. So sometimes you have situations where a septic system fails on a smaller property. They don't have any room for a secondary or a different type of system other than going to a mound type system, which kind of carries its own challenges unto itself. But so I think the point there is that some of these properties that have failed systems don't really have an alternative.
Right.
And I think some of these properties are on 201 systems, which are city wastewater treatment systems in some of these areas that were done through an EPA grant back in the 80s. But that's kind of one example of what the steps the city would take, I guess, in the case where you might have some failed systems and not a lot of options or opportunities for further expansion of those types of systems. So.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. As changing the page a bit, we see quite a few developments, plats come in. Could you describe the process that takes? Last night I was watching the Planning Commission meeting, and I believe it was about a 4-hour meeting at least, close to anyway. And I thought the Planning Commission did a wonderful job of deliberating upon it and looking at it, and staff's done their homework and all that. Describe the process from when a concept comes in,
right,
and then to its final conclusion.
Right.
Success, if it is successful, let's make that assumption.
Right. You know, the first thing that will typically happen is a landowner or a developer or an applicant will contact city staff. They'll set up a pre-application meeting, and at that meeting is when we'll really bring out that comprehensive plan, that guiding land use policy of the city to determine if what they want to do with their land, with their proposed project makes sense in the context of the comp plan. And so what that means is, you know, a developer and that landowner says, I want to, you know, build a single-family neighborhood. Is my property guided for that density category or that land use category that this makes sense? So at the very beginning level, we would talk with the applicant about what their plans for the land are. And then moving on from there is when they would probably put together a sketch or a concept plan, what we call that. And that's really the first phase. Sketch and concept plan would be reviewed by staff and presented to the Planning Commission and City Council for formal feedback. There isn't a formal approval process for sketch plans, as it is just the first, kind of the first look, if you will, at what they're planning to do with the land. But at that point, once they've gotten that feedback from city staff, from the Planning Commission and City Council, when going through that sketch plan, at that time, they would make adjustments to their plan and then start to pull together the actual greater detail that is required to start going through a plan review. And that stage is what's known as preliminary plat. Mm-hmm. And that's when you get into all of the, you know, the engineering details of the sewer, the water service, the roads, all of those components, particularly the stormwater, you know, which is an even area of greater importance nowadays. But that's the level that we get into all those details, is at preliminary plat. And so at preliminary plat, under state statute, you do have to have a public hearing. So all property owners within a certain boundary or distance, 350 feet is the standard there, are notified. The city holds a public hearing at the Planning Commission level. The Planning Commission deliberates the merits of the plat in the context of the city's comprehensive plan, as well as our zoning code and our ordinances that do govern land use. And then they make a recommendation to the City Council. Mm-hmm. If the preliminary plat is approved by the City Council, at which point the applicant is required to make whatever changes as a result of the conditions or the review of the preliminary plat, and then compile that into what's known as a final plat. And a final plat is really the document once the city approves that. The city staff and the city officials are looking for consistency of the final plat to the approved preliminary plat and whatever conditions were attached to that. And then if they do get final plat approval at that time, they could get their plat recorded at Washington County. And once it's recorded, that's when you actually see the parcels of land be subdivided and recorded. So that's how you got into your home at some point. So that's kind of the development process, and it's really a 3-step process that we go through. And typically we've been having these developments be reviewed by the Parks Commission in addition to the Planning Commission. So I think we're doing a fairly strong job in having lots of different policymakers of the city review these plans to make sure that we're kind of staying on top of it and trying to ensure a successful project in effect.
You mentioned the Parks Commission, just another entity in the group of individuals that we're blessed with as this process to come on, weigh in, and take their input. What are the current trends in development interests around Lake Elmo, maybe as a region? What are you seeing out there? Yeah, I mean, right now at this point, in terms of the activity that we've seen thus far in the planning department and seeing the various development applications come forward thus far, what we're seeing is mostly single-family residential subdivisions. Mm-hmm. That's been the majority of the activity. There has been a few commercial projects that have come through as of late, but the majority of the outreach or the activity that we've seen from the development community in Lake Elmo thus far is mostly single-family residential subdivisions. I think there's probably a couple reasons for that. There's certainly strong school district here in the area, so you're going to see that's an attractive thing for single-family home builders who certainly are, in most cases, attracting families to live in these types of developments. So, but proximities to the downtowns is also pretty important in that. Just a metro trend that certainly there's not as many residential lots contained within the first or second ring suburbs as there once was. A lot of the metro is built out, so I think there is a fair amount of interest for single family lots in Lake Elmo. And a portion of that too is just simply the amenities that you have available to you here as well. Not only the Lake Elmo Regional Park Reserve,
but lots of, open and green space areas that you're not going to find in other community types. And so, you've got the good access to transportation with I-94, 694, Highway 36, but Highway 5 to a certain lesser extent. But there's lots of amenities that are kind of driving this residential interest in Lake Elmo, I would say.
Yeah, it's certainly a desirable piece of land, area as a whole. We have this many developments come before us as they are. It does a lot to help pay for the infrastructures that we're putting in.
Correct.
The sewer to the village. And could you talk a little bit about, the council has enacted 100% developer pay policy, and with the exception of oversize, that's pretty much how it goes. Once these things are born, what policies, could you speak to the policies the city has in place, the bonds and whatnot, in order to compel, dare I say compel, the project to completion?
Correct.
To handle the city's liabilities.
Yeah, I think previously, earlier in the 2000s, it was kind of a more standard practice for communities to accept performance bonds and other forms of financial security. I think with the direction of this city council and with other people who are involved, we're transitioning more to a financial security that's more of a letter of credit, irrevocable letter of credit. And so what that means is that if they fail to perform any of the public improvements that's as part of an approved development, the roads, the streets, the trails, the landscaping, the sewer, the water, if they fail to perform some of those things, the city has a pool of resources that they can use to then complete the portions of the segments of the project that were uncompleted, if that's ever the case. We never hope that is the case.
Right.
Certainly, one of our safety nets, if you will, or our tests that we're using is that we do try and put developers through their paces in the form of financial background checks and some of those things as well, to ensure that we are working with partners who can perform against what they say that they're going to do. And so that's an important component of that as well. So not only the financial security, but doing the due diligence about who the applicants are, and making sure that the city is working with folks, teams of people who can perform.
Thanks. I was going to ask you the features of new developing areas, anything interesting features you've seen, somewhat unique or unusual or beneficial. What do you think?
I think a couple things I could probably mention there. You did mention the Park Commission to a certain extent. The city did do a 2013 park survey to all its residents, and I think one of the biggest pieces of feedback from that was really a desire to see more, not only local but regional trail facilities for the community to utilize. I think walking, biking, jogging, I think these are recreational activities that have gained more prominence or as a more requested amenity than maybe subdivisions in the 70s and 80s in the past, per se, where more probably larger neighborhood parks were kind of more the norm. So I think something that we're seeing as part of these new subdivisions is, and that's kind of with the direction of the Park Commission, is really to focus on trail amenities, have the ability to have connectivity via pedestrian or bicycle. So, this is certainly a second-ring suburb. You're always going to be using your automobile in most cases. There's kind of no getting around that with the location of where you're at here in Lake Elmo. But, it provides, future residents and existing residents the opportunity to get out and utilize some form of alternative transportation, whether it be walking or biking. So I think that's a kind of critical amenity that we've been pushing for with the direction of the Park Commission, and I think the development community has been pretty responsive with that. They have noted themselves that it has been more of a market-driven amenity that their buyers are coming to expect. Right. And so I think that's kind of a perfect storm to a certain extent for us, in that the builders are willing to do it. They want to do it. They see it as they see value in it for their future home buyer, or their future resident, and our Park Commission and the existing residents are kind of clamoring for it as well. So I think there's some definite, it's kind of going together there. Yeah. It's a congruity.
Yeah, it works for me. I think the trails, trails that take you someplace, you can go someplace, either into our downtown or, the periphery of the city. I think that's a real asset, and I think it does a lot for the city.
Yeah, absolutely.
Help everybody out. So let's talk about our downtown. I don't believe there's much activity going on there now. My expectation is once we get some rooftops, perhaps you'll see some interest. Am I Has there been any any activity down?
There hasn't been any activity downtown thus far, but that's, I would guess mostly linked to the fact that they don't have sanitary sewer available to those properties just yet. As you do know, we are planning for sanitary sewer in 2015 and 16 in the downtown area. So certainly that'll be the real litmus test to see once we have sewer available to these parcels, what are the development and redevelopment opportunities for the downtown. But the village land use plan was really the kind of the elements or the focus of the village land use plan was to have kind of a ring of residential, so mostly single family, around the downtown area, and then kind of go towards what this mixed use zone that we've talked about as part of the village. And so what a village mixed use zone really is that a lot of traditional Main Street downtowns, when they developed, there was a focus on integration of both residential and commercial land uses within. It's not just this is a commercial zone versus this is a residential zone, which is a much more typical suburban development pattern where you have all of those uses separated from one another. But with a vibrant type downtown, what really the focus is to integrate those uses. So you kind of have, you have activity happening at all portions of the day. You have your businesses that are operating during the day. You have residents that are living there at night. So it really becomes a district that's has more activity and more vibrancy. And hopefully, our hope is that we'll create a pretty good environment for economic activity in the downtown. And what the village mixed-use zone really does, when you boil it down, allows a mix of residential and commercial uses that hopefully really get at that more walkable, traditional Main Street type development pattern that that most places went away from in the 60s and 70s and 80s when the automobile was more of a focus. The trend is kind of to get back to more of that compact type development for a downtown, specifically for a downtown area. Yeah. And so that certainly would be the goal there. Okay. And then the only thing I would add to about the downtown is that the county did move up the Lake Elmo Avenue reconstruction in their capital improvement plan. I think it was kind of off the radar completely, and then maybe 2018 and now up to 2015. So I think that there's a real benefit and a real great partner there in Washington County to look at this reconstruction of Lake Elmo Avenue as the opportunity to not only bring sewer up, but to maybe do some of the streetscape type improvements that you typically see in a downtown, which hopefully will spur a little bit of investment from the private side as well.
I'll be remiss if I didn't mention the county did respond to our request to move it up a little bit, so we appreciate that. There's a lot of talk, a lot of concerns, valid concerns about the stormwater. All this development and how are we going to handle the stormwater? Certainly we have difficulties with it already, and chiefly among our areas in our downtown. Mm-hmm. It seems counterintuitive, but mm-hmm. the very thing that we're doing, my understanding, will allow us some benefit, some relief, pardon the pun, in that particular problem as it relates to flooding downtown. Mm-hmm. Can you expand on why?
Yeah, well, I think one of the benefits that we talked about this earlier, Mayor, is that one of the benefits of the city waiting to do some of its development mm-hmm. until a later time is that the stormwater rules and regulations, even from the state as well as the local watershed side, are a little bit more stringent than they used to be. When a lot of other communities develop, you used to be able to just send all your water to a more regional retention and
move it down the line.
Yeah. Exactly. And now there's more of an emphasis on on-site infiltration, doing some of those things. Generally, the rule is that you can't send more rate and more volume off your site than was the previous existing condition. So that's just the baseline operating principle for any stormwater system that will serve these areas. So in other words, the scenario can't be any worse than when you first initially developed the property. Right. But we are still hopeful that even beyond just going to what the existing condition is, that you can hold some of the volume and rate back. And that, typically now, particularly in the village area as it relates to that, you see just that there's no control for how much, particularly
a lot of rate, a lot of volume.
Right.
Yeah.
And it all comes fast, I think is what we're seeing. Mm-hmm. And it moves so quickly through the downtown area that really leads to a lot of those flooding concerns and those issues that folks talk about. And so, the hope is there that with some of the newly developing areas, particularly in the northern portion of the village where a lot of the water comes from, kind of down to the Downs Lake subwatershed and the Lake Elmo subwatershed and Legion Pond and those types of things. The hope there is that, we can kind of slow some of this water down and kind of alleviate some of those concerns. On the flip side of that, another thing that we're actually looking at and working with the local watershed district on is potentially a study to divert some of the stormwater to other sub-watersheds. So actually take a little bit of that water out that's causing a lot of those downtown flooding situations. That's a study that will be ongoing. Obviously, the local watershed district isn't going to approve a plan that will create a negative impact for other property owners within those other sub-watersheds. So it's something they're carefully examining, and it's certainly uncertain whether that'll be the case. But if it does work, and it is something that can help alleviate a lot of those downtown flooding issues, and there aren't any negative impacts to the other property owners, that could be a great benefit to the city.
Right.
I would
Yeah,
say.
that's a tremendous upside. There is talk of even using some of it as an amenity to some degree through the town, a little stream perhaps, or something next to a walkway.
Yeah, there's lots of opportunities to do innovative things that, on a reuse standpoint, but also kind of daylighting creeks and doing some of those things that could still be on the table. It's we're always trying to stay focused on just the roads, the streets, the sewers, and the real important pieces. But that's something that certainly could be looked at as well.
You do tend to drift off on some of the more exciting aspects of it, perhaps. But I think that is a real plus for the city as some of these things come in, and it's that water will get captured. Most of it, right, get captured and get into the aquifer. Whereas right now it just kind of, as we said, kind of scooted on down the line. So
Right. Well, and I mean, another thing related to stormwater is now there's a lot of streets that don't have any curb and gutter, a storm sewer to really, effectively capture and kind of control a lot of that stormwater. So I think in some cases it kind of, it has a mind of its own. It goes where it wants to go, and there's no man-made infrastructure to really send it in a more desirable direction or location. And so part of doing some of the street reconstructions that will be inevitable with some of the sewer extensions is that you can kind of put in some infrastructure for stormwater as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, Mr. Johnson, certainly you're supported by some of the commissions we have in the city. But beyond that, I think you guys are doing a great job. And I know you've got a ton of work on your plate. How you do it all. Again, I saw a meeting where it's all 11 o'clock almost last night. So we appreciate all that you're doing. And thanks for stopping by today and visiting with me. And
Absolutely.
I'm sure hopefully we've conveyed some of the information going on in the city. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for the opportunity.
You bet. That concludes another edition of the Mayor Show. Thank you very much for watching.